Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I want to introduce you to a very impressive executive that's critically important to the city of Toronto these days. His name is Vic Gupta, and he is the CEO of an organization that's about 4 years old called Create TO. That is the organization that really runs the real estate portfolio for the city of Toronto. Vic, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So you've got 8,000 properties in the real estate portfolio that you're responsible for. It's the most expansive, diverse, and valuable real estate portfolio in all of North American cities, according to Create TO's website. Really? That's incredible. That's a huge portfolio that you're responsible for, sir.
It is. It is. This includes, Brian. This would include all of the real estate holdings. So, where you see community centers and libraries and our Toronto community housing portfolio, all of the social housing. We're, I think, the second largest social housing provider in North America. So, including all of that, as well as, I think people would be surprised, there's a lot of commercial land that the private sector has long-term leases with us and buildings on those properties that we also own. So yeah, it's quite an expansive, impressive portfolio.
Was it distributed amongst different organizations previously? Why was Create TO created?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. In the past, Brian, what would happen is there was up to about 24 different city divisions, agencies, corporations, all responsible for their own real estate. And so you had no central coordination, you had no sort of center of excellence in terms of making those strategic decisions. And, I think one of the insights that council had is that, we're a growing city. We expect, as you'll know as well, in Mississauga and the GTA, we expect probably upwards of at least half of the immigrants that are coming into Canada settling in the GTA. Many of them will settle right in Toronto. And so there's a growing need on services. We know that the infrastructure is aging, and we just got to take, I think the wisdom of City Council was that we got to take better advantage of that real estate and create more kind of economies of scale, create more multi-use sites. So, in other words, we don't want to see a community center on a 4-acre site without thinking about what else could go there to serve the public. So can you put a library there? Can you put some affordable housing, a daycare, all of this to try to create what we would call complete communities? So I think that was the wisdom behind it. And so now Create TO really has the mandate to be that central strategic advisor to the city in terms of how best to utilize that real estate. So we're really, our clients, as I'd say, are really the city of Toronto and its divisions in terms of best serving them and their needs.
So, with no disrespect, creative and strategic are not words that are typically described or used to describe government bureaucracies. How have you been able to change that attitude?
Well, we are an organization that came from two legacy corporations that were entirely owned by the City of Toronto, but operated very much like private businesses. One of them was called Build Toronto. It took the city's surplus land and essentially really tried to maximize value and sold it on the market. So it really its objective was to actually make profit and send it back to the city. The other organization was an organization called Toronto Portlands Corporation, and it was responsible for all of the land that the city owned in the Portlands, and it ran a property management business. So it generated revenue by looking after leases and leasing land. So I think the history of our organization is really very much one of a private sector mindset of really of really being disciplined and taking advantage of opportunity to realize that kind of value from the land. I'd also say that because we're at arm's length from the city, we're able to be a lot more nimble. We do leverage the private sector. We reach out into the private sector to hire architects and designers and so on. We don't have those in-house, but we got a strong team of development folks and planners and, again, strategic thinkers who've come from the city who, are really motivated to try to advance a lot of these issues. So I think because we're at arm's length, we can be a bit more nimble because we have a legacy of operating like private entities. We have a business mindset to try to create value. And I'd say we're probably the agency that deals most with the private sector. And I think we've got, a lot of our people have come from the private sector. So I think we understand how to, get business deals done with the private sector and move and advance these files forward. Our mindset is just a little different. And I think our objectives are just a little different than they are when you're in the city public service itself.
So TTC, for an example, or parking authority, do you own the lands that they would be operating on?
Well, so actually, why I described it, Brian, as us are, that we're sort of strategic advisors, is that they continue to own the land. So the city of Toronto ultimately is the shareholder, owns all the land, but they're really not able to make strategic decisions about how to utilize their own real estate without seeking our input. And they're not really in the business of, the TTC really doesn't think about real estate decision making when they think about their operations. They just think about their operations. Parking authorities, similarly, they're looking to put lots in places where they think people are going to park. Now they're also looking at the future of their own business. But yeah, so the city would continue to own the real estate, but those are two great examples, because those are two corporations that the city owns, that own under their own title on behalf of the city lots of real estate. And so, we don't want to see transit stations built, which we know there's a massive expansion of transit, Brian. We don't want to see transit stations just built as ladders to a platform. We want to take advantage of the development opportunity there to build affordable housing, to see what other needs the city might have in that area. Maybe we put, again, a daycare, a library, a community center, something like that, to just take advantage of that real estate. We all know real estate is so expensive. If the city had to acquire real estate on an ongoing basis to satisfy its needs, I think we'd go bankrupt pretty quick. The city just doesn't have that kind of a bankroll. So it's important that we look at these opportunities to leverage the real estate to really provide benefit to the city of Toronto and the people.
We're chatting tonight with Vic Gupta. He is the CEO of an organization that, a lot of us probably aren't familiar with, called Create TO. That is an organization that really is responsible for the land holdings that the city of Toronto has. And they've got 8,000 properties that they're responsible for in their portfolio. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in just 2 minutes with Vic Gupta. I'm going to ask him about, what Toronto can do to maximize its real estate holdings, what they can do to work more closely with the private sector. We're going to talk about some of the social housing needs. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Our guest tonight is Vic Gupta. He is the CEO of Create TO. Create TO is the City of Toronto's real estate portfolio manager, effectively. It's one of the most expansive, diverse, and valuable real estate portfolios. 8,000 properties that they are responsible for managing in all of North America. It's really quite an interesting organization. And Vic is an interesting gentleman. He's focused on managing the stewardship of the City of Toronto's real estate assets and optimizing the portfolio to deliver, he says, city building benefits, enable city program solutions, and ensure cost-effective program delivery. Sounds like a lot like the private sector, not necessarily the public sector. Vic served as the principal secretary to Mayor John Tory during the mayor's first term in office. Prior to that time, he ran Prime Strategies Group, a public affairs consulting business that he founded in 1999. The company was acquired in 2011. He ran for elected office twice as a candidate for the member of provincial parliament in the riding of Richmond Hill. He's got a Bachelor of Arts in political science from the University of Western Ontario. Pretty impressive background. How was it running for member of provincial parliament?
Oh, it was one of the best experiences I could have ever had, Brian. I mean, I wasn't successful, unfortunately, successful in the way we want to be successful, but I was successful in, I think, so many other ways. It was, as my wife said to me, I've never really met somebody who likes to go and knock on strangers' doors and talk to them about their challenges. So it was a real treat to meet, my neighbors and the community and really understand the issues that really mattered to people. And it kind of really, tapped into my, I think, my desire to serve and make a difference in our community. And
then principal secretary to Mayor John Tory. That must have been interesting. That, coming after the prior mayor that was a little bit newsworthy.
Yeah.
Is that a good word to describe? And really, smart tracks was one of the big issues, and bringing some managerial processes to City Hall. Tell me what that couple of years was like.
Yeah, I was there for almost entirely the first term for Mayor Tory. It was a tremendous experience. I think, to work for a guy who has the business acumen, the commitment to civic society and wanting to really make a difference, who's a centrist. I think he's just the consummate consensus builder. I think his style really led to being an effective mayor in a city where you're only one vote. I know he may be getting some strong mayor powers, we're hearing, but I've always believed you don't have to have strong mayor powers to be a strong mayor, and I think he displayed that. So it was a real great opportunity. I think the thing that and I'm sure your listeners will appreciate, that the city government is the closest to the people. I think the decisions that we were able to make affect people in a very material way very quickly. So I think there was a lot of gratification in terms of the work we did. But there's just so many issues, and when you're in one of those senior offices, there's just never enough hours in the day to try to deal with all the issues that come your way. So you kind of have to be satisfied that you're going to constantly drink from a fire hose, and you hope you close more files at the end of the day than were left open. And I think that's kind of your measure of success. But I'm a born and bred Torontonian, Brian, to immigrant parents who came with nothing, not too dissimilar, I'm sure, to many of the listeners of your program, and to have an opportunity to serve the mayor of my city, one generation removed from another country, I think was just what it is one of the greatest gifts I could have ever had. So I just treat it as an amazing privilege, and honored to have been able to serve for someone like Mayor Tory. And, now he's running for a third term, and I think probably a good bet. I'm not saying, elections matter, but probably a good bet that he'll get back in. And I think it's just a testament to the kind of leadership he's shown the city.
I was at a recent speech that he made to the Toronto Region Board of Trade downtown Toronto. And, the list of issues that he still has to deal with, that he spoke about during the speech was really quite interesting. One of them was fascinating and really has a connection to you and your business. He was saying that Go Transit and TTC are back up to sort of pre-pandemic ridership Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but are not on Mondays and Fridays. And so therefore, clearly the hybrid sort of methodology of work is still with us. And he said that a lot of real estate assets are challenged. The TTC and the Go Transit are challenged if they don't have that revenue and that business Mondays and Fridays. What do you think is going to happen with downtown Toronto and office work? Is it going to stay a couple days a week? Is it going to be challenged? Are those food courts going to be out of business? Or offices going to be challenged to make the rent? Or are companies going to be downsizing? Is the TTC and Go Transit going to be challenged with lower revenue? How are we going to deal with all that?
Those are really insightful questions, Brian. And I think they're just enormous issues that I think all major cities are going to have to face. I came in today to the office and noticed that it felt like it was pre-pandemic out there in terms of people moving, traffic, and so on. And it's a Thursday, so you can see where probably tomorrow will be a lot lighter, and it's still in the summer where we tend to see it a little lighter. So I think that's actually very interesting perspective that the mayor has. We're seeing very similar things. Where I think the vacancy rate in downtown Toronto, I think in the office market is still hovering at 7-8%, if not a bit higher. Those are huge numbers. Those are just in a city with the amount of millions of square feet of office space. That's just a lot of office space that's not rented. I think I think the short answer is we don't really know yet. We don't have a crystal ball. I personally believe that the hybrid model is going to stick. I do think that there's a ton of value, of course, in coming back to the office. I mean, I've encouraged our team to be back in the office, but we also are operating in a hybrid model. But I think that's the right balance. And I think people feel a better kind of quality of life and work-life balance by doing that. So I think there's, I think the real estate sector is going to have to respond. The real estate is, it's built, these buildings are built. So we'll really have to have, I think, a policy discussion about how we can change some of these uses potentially from office to other valuable uses, whether that's community space, whether that's public space, whether that some of these are even converted to residential. But I think it'll be, real estate's not a quick cycle, right? It takes time. And I think it'll be a few more years yet till we can really determine the impact. And the other thing, Brian, I'll say is, look at where we are now with record inflation and kind of where, not sure where the economy is going. Are we going to have a soft landing? Are we going to fall off a cliff here? I think, the real estate sector is clearly slowed down. Construction has slowed down. We're seeing that. And so, again, how does that relate to the issue of office vacancy as well? So I think it's a really kind of precarious time in certainly in the office market. Now residential is a little more tricky as well. So I think we'll have to kind of I think everyone's just kind of holding on and hedging their bets for the time being and waiting until the next kind of 18 months to 2 years goes by, and then we'll see what it looks like.
Great, TO, you said is, really there to create strategic, innovative, creative solutions with the private sector and with some of the assets that you've got. It was mentioned to me that there's two really good examples of what you've done: 260 Adelaide, 229 Richmond, and Modern TO. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about those projects and why they're great examples of how you work with other city departments and potentially the public sector, the private sector.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to talk about those, Brian. I'll start with 229 Richmond and 260 Adelaide. They're just two street addresses, but it's a little bit of a smaller project than the Modern TO project. But we're really excited about this. There's the city owns a fire hall at 260 Adelaide. Some of your listeners who may come downtown, Adelaide used to be the sort of the club district, entertainment district in Toronto. Obviously the area has changed a lot, but I remember as a kid seeing that fire, or as a younger person seeing that fire hall there, and it's at the end of its natural life. It needs to be replaced, and so what we've done is we worked with all of the adjacent landowners that own property in that area to try to determine how best to what could we do there that really doesn't just put a condo there or doesn't just put a fire hall there with no other opportunity. But we've worked with the adjacent landowners and decided to, on the city's behalf, acquire 229 Richmond, which was a vacant parcel of land just on the other side north of 260. The city is very deficient in parkland, Brian, and green space. And so that site is going to be a park. At 260 Adelaide, we're going to, there is going to be a residential, residential building, but there's going to be up to 30% affordable housing in that building, along with 20,000 square feet of community space. There's going to be a daycare. And with the way we've been able to do that is to take the fire hall and move it to another location instead of relocating it at its current site. So we're relocating it somewhere else, which then frees up the opportunity to create that value and that integrated development with one of the private sector partners that's already there. So we're in a joint venture, a relationship with them. And not all the uses have been finalized. We don't know exactly what the community space will end up being. Lots of exciting thoughts about whether it could be an incubator space, whether it could be potentially a museum. But we definitely know there's going to be a lot of affordable housing. There's going to be a beautiful public park, a signature park. There's going to be a daycare, and again, all facilitated by thinking creatively that we didn't need to relocate the fire hall there. And here's, I think, the best way to tell the story is, some of your listeners may say, "Oh, that sounds great. That sounds pretty creative." But let me paint it this way. In the past, what would have happened before Creatio existed is you would have had one of two things. Either that fire hall would have been rebuilt right there on site, and you would have foregone all of that revenue opportunity of building on that site. That's a high value site in the city of downtown Toronto. You can put probably a 50-story office, or sorry, a tower there. Or the opposite would have happened. It would have just been an a condo building with, you know, market rents or condos sold off to the public with no other public benefit. And so I think with Cratio stepping in, thinking about it a little differently, talking to the landowners in the area, talking to the fire services, you know, thinking about where they could locate to still serve that core area of downtown Toronto, it allows us to be a little more creative and to assemble the parking lot north of the site to put an important public park there. So I think that's a great example of the kind of work we do. And then on Modern TO is a very significant project, Brian. The city, it's a project that is really about the office modernization of the city staff and where they're located. So the city has the city was leasing 52 private leases with with the private sector where we were locating our staff. And through this analysis that we did, we made the decision to minimize the space from 250 square feet per person of office space to 140 square feet. And we made this decision pre-COVID.
Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight with Vic Gupta, who is the CEO of Create Toronto, the organization in Toronto set up by the City of Toronto to manage strategically all of the assets, the real estate assets that the City of Toronto has. Vic, you were just talking a little bit about this modern TO and how you were slimming down the amount of square feet that every single one of the employees has, and tell us what's the result of that process.
Well, it's a tremendous success, Brian. We've gone from 52 leases that the city was a party to, obviously at great expense to the city, now down to about 19 leases. It's also freed up 8 city buildings, the TTC headquarters, the Toronto Community Housing headquarters, the Toronto Parking Authority's head office, a lot of buildings of that nature, 8 of them. The total savings of this program, the buildings themselves have a market value of approximately $450 million. And the savings from the leases has saved on an annual basis, including lease costs, operating and capital costs of about $30 million a year. If you just do a straight line calculation over 25 years, that's a $750 million saving. So overall, this program is saving the city or generating cash and savings and combined over $1.2 billion. What we are doing is we're investing some of that money, about $250 million, into the civic centers. So Metro Hall, Scarborough Civic Center, North York Civic Center, and really making those hubs, as well as a brand new civic center in Etobicoke. We're making those hubs the new hubs for the city staff. So now if you live in Etobicoke, you don't got to come downtown to work. You can remote work, or you can plug in Scarborough. You can go into your office there, and so everything will be sort of hoteling is the term they use, or you're going to have the ability. No one will own their own desk. You'll have the ability to kind of show up at whatever location makes sense, sign in for a desk, plug in, have state-of-the-art telecommunications available to you, and you'll be able to get on with your day. And I think it's going to make the city's functioning more efficient. I think it's going to create better work-life balance for employees, hopefully have better and more happier employees, which leads to better, higher quality work. So I think it's a great program, and this is something that Mayor Tory championed and council approved. So we're really, really excited about that. I think it's a tremendous success for our agency to have delivered for the city.
Excellent. Congratulations on that. Let me ask you about affordability, which you touched on. Affordable housing is probably one of the big issues that, politically everyone is talking about. It was clearly one of the big issues in the last federal and provincial campaigns, and certainly was a big issue even 4 years ago in the last municipal campaign. I interviewed the chief economist of CMHC, and he said that they project that the Greater Toronto, Southern Ontario, so not just Toronto, but the Greater Toronto area, needs something like 1.5 to 1.8 million new homes above what would otherwise regularly be built in the next 8 years, such that we end up with housing that ends up being affordable. And if we don't build them, then he thinks that our affordability sort of ability will go away completely. And regular people won't be able to live, not just in Toronto, but in Toronto and the 905. And everyone will be moving to the 519, 705, et cetera. So affordability is a big issue. We've got this challenge of interest rates going up and real estate prices potentially going down, such that developers, from what I understand, are stalling, holding back, slowing down development, which is going to exacerbate that problem potentially even more. The City of Toronto, I understand, put in place a 40% increase in development fees recently. And then you've got inclusionary zoning, which is requiring different developers within transit areas to build between 10 and 20% of their homes as deemed affordable. What's going to happen? It sounds like it's like a perfect storm, and we're not going to be able to live in Toronto anymore.
You know, it is a real challenge, Brian. I think that's a great way of describing it. It is a perfect storm of interest rate increases, you know, the slowdown in terms of construction and the combination of it. I don't need to repeat everything you just said. You know, I think, you know, I can't comment on the political decision to increase development charges. What I can say is that, you know, the city infrastructure needs to be invested in. You know, we need new sewer pipes. We need you know, investments in the community centers and so on. Those are the kinds of things that are paid for out of the DCs. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of discussion and debate with the sector about what the right number was. And, you know, typically those things get settled. But yeah, at the end of the day, that all ends up into the price of a new unit, right? That we all understand the private sector doesn't eat that cost up. They do as much as they can to pass it through. You know, from our part, as an agency that is really focused on and has been really focused on trying to build affordable housing, we've been mandated to work with the housing secretariat at the city to deliver a program called Housing Now, Brian, and it is a signature program of this the city council. And what that program was aiming to do is to deliver 10,000 affordable units. You know, now to deliver 10,000 affordable units, we're probably having to actually put about 30,000 out to the market. So that's pretty exciting program. That's now over 10 years to try to do that. It's a tall order. We've identified, you know, a number of sites, up to about 25 different sites, city-owned sites to deliver that. And how that program works, Brian, is that we essentially take the value of the land, which the city owns, and we defer the development charges. We defer or provide relief on the property taxes. So we try to take all of those costs that the city then imposes and eliminate them, and then also don't charge anything for the land. And so all of that value gets put into buying the affordability. And so our goal with the program is to create 99 years of affordability with at least 1/3 of the units on any of those sites, and to do so at a what's called AMR. There's an average market rent kind of statistic or number that the CMHC provides. Our goal is to deliver that at 80% of AMR. And AMR is an interesting concept because in the city of Toronto, AMR is well below what is actually market rent. So 80% AMR actually results in about a 50%, on average, about 50% of what actual market rents are. So if we can get this program you know, to its successful conclusion, we'll have a lot of affordable, you know, that's sort of the city's contribution. But look, this responsibility of affordable housing is one that has to be shared between all three levels of government. You know, the city can't on its own deliver the kind of affordable housing we need. And you're right, we're at a very challenging point in time now where we don't just need affordable housing, we need more housing, period. And with the economics as they are these days,
1.5 to 1.8 million additional homes above what would normally be built according to the CMHC. Like, that's a staggering number.
Yeah, right. And so even though, our targets are ambitious from a city standpoint, it's a drop in the bucket of what is being required. We're talking about tens of thousands, and the requirement is into the millions. So, we can only control at Creatio what is in our domain. We're doing the best we can. We work cooperatively with our partners at the CMHC, where I know the mayor is constantly on the phone and in meetings with both other governments to sort of do more and do more and do more. So we're doing what we can, but I think there's no sugarcoating it. I think we are going to be challenged over the next few years, and I think if we, as a city, want to continue to attract the best and the brightest out there from all over the world, where we are one of the most desired locations, because coming to Toronto, coming to the GTA is like coming home for so many of these people, right? They feel at home here because they see people from their community. They can go down the street and probably buy a meal from language being spoken on transit or in the community. And so we want to make sure we continue to provide a home to these people. So I think, as I said, we're doing what we can at Creatio, and the governments are focused on it. And I think, I think the next little while.
Vic, you had a public affairs background. You worked as principal secretary to the mayor. What attracted you to become this CEO of Creatio?
Brian, thank you for that question. I really, I've always been drawn both, I think, to government, trying to, I think as a younger person, whether it was being on student council or getting involved in working for various politicians, or helping the private sector understand how to better and more effectively communicate to government in my public affairs business. I've always found it important to have my say in how decisions were made that affect our lives. And so that's what drew me to politics and government in general. And I think, when I was working for Mayor Tory, and it was really his vision to come up with the notion of having a center of excellence for real estate. And I just, and it was a real treat to be part of setting that up. And when the opportunity came, when I left the mayor's office, and I was sort of thinking about my next step, and I took some time off, an opportunity.
That must have been a pretty difficult decision to leave the mayor's office, and then this is sort of like the perfect opportunity came along at just the right time to get involved in Creatio.
Yeah, it is, and to have the opportunity, to now become the CEO and to lead it is, again, it's just a tremendous privilege. I think we have the opportunity to make a real difference on behalf of the people of Toronto, in how they enjoy their city and the services that they receive. I think, I feel a real passion towards it. I realized after I sold my business that, to get me out of bed each day, I needed to do something that was mission driven. And I think this is that. And I try to, all the people that are here, we have a team of about 75 people, and they're entirely focused on delivering value to the people of Toronto. They all care deeply about this city. And I think it's just a tremendous opportunity we have to do that. And I think with my background at the city and my background in government in general, I think it gives me a bit of a it's a great combination of understanding government, the need to understand government, and understand how the business community thinks as well. So I feel well positioned to be able to provide value in this role to the city, and hopefully we can hit a few out of the park and deliver some great results for the people of Toronto.
Tell me about the Portlands. I understand you're also responsible for the city of Toronto's involvement in the Portlands.
The Portlands is really just a tremendous opportunity for the city of Toronto. It's the next great frontier, I think. We on behalf of the city actually own title to most of the land in the Portlands. There's about 800 acres of land, and right now Waterfront Toronto is leading. One of our partners there, I guess, is Waterfront Toronto. They're leading the what's called the Portland's Flood Protection Project, a $1.2 billion project to essentially create a new mouth of the Don River to address what could be flooding issues, in the future. And we're all seeing the impact of climate change, and these what they once called 100-year storms seem to be happening every summer. And so the impact on our environment is significant. And so with that investment, it creates tremendous opportunity there with the flood proofing to invest in that area. The city has spent a lot of effort creating an overall planning policy document called the Portland's Planning Framework. And that kind of sets out how we want to develop that land. And we really have charge of that. So there's a very well-developed film industry, Brian, that we're continuing to invest in down in the Portlands. We have a lot of commercial uses down there. We're looking at ways to improve those and enhance those. And then there'll be a lot of mixed-use communities that are being developed there in terms of residential communities with we're trying to create an opportunity down there where you can live, work, and play in the Portlands, and again, really build out these complete communities. I would like to take a minute to talk about the film industry.
Yeah, I didn't know we had film industry involvement. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we really do. We have, film in Toronto is one of the most significant industries that we have. We employ, I think, and I'm, maybe a little bit off on this number, but I think in and around 40,000 direct jobs in the film industry. These are people behind the camera. These are people in editing suites. These are people doing visual effects. We have a tremendous industry. Our colleges are producing really talented people. These are good, in many cases, good union jobs, high wage jobs. And as one of the studio owners once said to me, when a Hollywood studio commits to $100 million film to be shot in Toronto, that's a film that's probably going to get shot over a 1-year period. He said it's literally like a guy getting off a plane with millions of dollars in cash, and he's spending it in the economy. It's such a huge impact into the economy, and you can imagine all the catering business, the logistics, all of the sort of knock-on effect of all of that income. So why we have a successful film industry? Well, because of our low dollar, because of our tax credits, because of the fact that we are a socially democratic country with a real compassionate mindset that really is important to Hollywood. And so what have we done in the Portlands? We have a very significant studio called Pinewood Studios that has existed there for about 10 years. We went to market for an adjacent site that we own, about 9 acres, and have gone through that process and have a partner out of LA called Hackman Capital, who was one of the largest film developers and studio operators in the world, and they won that bid, and they're going to be building out a $300 million studio. It's going to create 2,500 jobs. It's going to create hundreds of millions of dollars of economic activity in our city. We have another studio that is already there, so it's a tremendous industry for us. And we're really pleased that we've been able to, make a home for the film industry in the Portlands. When talent, as they call it, the Hollywood stars come to Toronto or come to any location, they also want to be close to the major hotels and the downtown core and the nice restaurants. And so the fact that the Portlands is less than 5 kilometers from downtown Toronto, from some of our best properties, some of our great entertainment and nightlife, is also of great appeal to them. So we're really well positioned to continue to nurture and develop this industry and make Toronto really Hollywood North.
Vic Gupta, CEO of Create Toronto, Create TO. Really appreciate you telling us about some of the things that you're up to. We're going to take a quick final break for messages and be back with some concluding comments with Mr. Gupta, the CEO of Create TO, in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Vic Gupta. He is the CEO of Create TO, the organization in Toronto responsible for strategically managing all of the several thousand, 9,000 different properties that the city of Toronto has. Vic, we got some challenges that we've been talking about. We've got, a housing just challenge, just generally. We've got an affordable housing challenge, a social housing challenge, transit, congestion. I interviewed Jennifer Keesmaat, the former chief city planner, and she said we did the zoning on Yonge Street right that allowed density, but Bloor Street we missed, and there's not enough density along Bloor Street. I've interviewed numerous different people that have been worried about property taxes for residential being too low and development charges being too high, and that we're not building enough homes, and that kids aren't going to be able to live in Toronto, and etc. What's your vision? What do you think the city of Toronto is going to be like in 5 or 10 years? With, as you said, the Liberal government's got 430,000 people coming to Canada every year, and you think half of them are going to come to Toronto, or at least the Greater Toronto area. We got, according to some people, a city the size of Montreal, moving to Toronto in the next 10 years. What can we do?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think governments need to continue to work together to address these challenges and ensure that their policies are aligned with the actual programs that they then announce. We've seen a little bit of, we've had a little challenges in terms of ensuring that the CMHC, for example, understands the complexity of our affordable housing program as one example. But I think that's really important. I think you need kind of policy alignment and then quick execution on that. If governments are going to put money up to create the kind of affordable housing we need, then we have to be able to deploy that money in a very quick timeline. The private sector needs certainty in that regard. And then I think from our perspective, we are 4 years in where I think for me as CEO now, there's a little bit of a time to kind of take stock and become a little more nimble, a little more efficient, and a little more focused on a number of key areas. I think affordable housing is always going to be a focus for us, of course, because we need to continue to develop our city-owned real estate with a mindset of developing, always looking to opportunities to develop affordable housing on any of our sites. I think we got to work with our partners at the city to look at a lot of sites in terms of the zoning designations to see if we can be a little more open-minded to those designations to maybe allow more zoning, more residential on some of those. I think that we also have an opportunity to take on and deliver on other public policy objectives that the city has determined. So, for example, the city has set very ambitious targets on climate change. And I think we want to see ourselves as an agency that is looking at those opportunities and delivering climate positive outcomes from our real estate. So we're involved right now, Brian, in a mass timber project. Mass timber is a unique, it's a unique building.
And lumber's down 50%.
Absolutely. Exactly. So you're familiar with that. So, those are the kinds of things we think we can do. And we also think we can seed economic development opportunities, whether it's finding real estate for, again, incubators, so we can recruit some of the best and the brightest from all over the world in our city. And so I think we see ourselves as being, helping utilize the city's real estate to deliver, important public policy goals that council has set as targets and as priorities for them. And I think, whatever we can do to support the mayor in his quest to get the other governments to kind of work with us and deliver on these important objectives. I mean, that's kind of what we see as our vision, and we're excited.
Vic Gupta, CEO of Create Toronto, Create TO. Thanks so much for joining us and telling us a little bit about your organization and what you're trying to do, and keep at it, sir. And if you've got any exciting projects or developments in the future, come back on our show and tell us a little bit about them, please. Thank you very much, Brian. It's been a real pleasure. That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online from Mississauga, Brampton, and even Toronto at www.saga960am.ca. Good night, everybody. Thanks.